To do is we're going to take the last example of a histogram and add more detail to it. We have a really nice histogram so far for data that I have in this list, quite a bit of values, and we have it set to 50 bins, but I also can put in more parameters to be able to set values the way that I would like it, or the look of the histogram a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one called color, and color is denoted with a single letter for each color. This is a light blue color. And then I'm going to add an edge color to make it a little easier to see each one of the blocks in my histogram, or buckets essentially, in my histogram. And K denotes the color black. So it makes it a little bit easier when I run it to see all the different parts. And again, sorry for my spelling. So there we can see it a little bit better. Because of those outlined edges, we can see all the buckets a little bit better that we have. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more description to this graph. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to import statistics. And I'm going to generate some values with statistics. So the first one I'm going to get is the mean, and I'm just going to call it M for mean. And the way that we generate this is we go to the statistics library, and then we're going to dot mean, and we're going to do the mean of our data set, which is that list D. The other value I'm going to generate here is standard deviation. I'm just going to give it a variable of SD for standard deviation. And I'm going to use standard deviation function that's within that statistics library. So I can print these values out. But the thing I'm going to do instead is I'm going to represent them graphically on the histogram. So I'm going to go back to the PLT object, which is our pyplot object, and use this other function called AXV line. And just like the histogram function, it comes with some parameters. The parameter that I'm going to put into it first is M, which is our variable for the median. And I'm going to put in a color for it as well. So some of these parameters are optional, but it gives me a little bit more control. I'm going to put in also the line style of dashed. So now when I run this, now I have this dashed line that is the histogram's median. So the mean. So right down the middle, the average of all the numbers appears right there. I'm also going to do is copy and paste to make this go a little faster. I'm going to put in a couple more lines. I'm going to put in the mean plus my standard deviation, and I'm going to make that color yellow for the line, and paste again, and I'm going to say the median minus the standard deviation. So the standard deviation, this is the population standard deviation, and it represents, on average, how far away you are from the middle in this data set if you're not in the middle. So that's, in truth, really the MAD, the mean average distance, but standard deviation is kind of like that thing called the MAD. Yeah, it just took a second. So what we have here now is this dashed line right down the middle again is the mean, the average of the data set. And the standard deviation is the distance that you are away from the middle. So in this graph, we can see pretty clearly the mean plus the standard deviation is this line to the right, and the mean minus the standard deviation is this line to the left. The standard deviation itself is just the distance away. So the standard deviation here is the distance from this line to the right and the distance from here to the left. So the other thing I'm going to do, which is going to be informative, I hope, is 2 standard deviations away by just copying and pasting and saying times 2. So now in this histogram graph, I have a lot more information happening that helps me understand it graphically. This data set, I have the average, I have the histogram itself with 50 buckets. I now have the average value showing up, the mean of the data, and then 1 standard deviation away, which represents, if you're not in the middle, basically how far away are you on average from the middle, which, to be honest, is not exactly right, but is kind of the idea for a standard deviation. And then 2 lines away is on 2 standard deviations away. So a lot of our data here fits within 1 standard deviation, but a lot more fits within 2 standard deviations.